All right. So we are fortunate to have Rick Bailey on our call today. So everybody who is watching the recording most likely knows about Rick. So Rick's my dad. He's the one who raised me in the business. Everything that I know in terms of the business, the estate planning, business planning, insurance, financial world, all started with him. So originally it was, hey Tyson, come clean my office, come file this paperwork, come shred these documents. And then fortunately, I don't know why or how, but he trusted me enough to start helping him design presentations and different marketing pieces that he would use to either train agents or use as point of sale support. And so one of the first books that he gave me was Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Then it was The Retirement Miracle by Patrick Kelly. And so that's kind of what started my trajectory into the business. Now, along the way, I found a love and a passion for the marketing side. So decided to branch out that way. But just a little bit about Rick's background. So, I mean, correct me if I miss anything, but former estate and tax planning attorney, master's in accounting, you were a financial planner. And then I remember I was probably in eighth grade when you got hired by Penn Mutual as the advanced planning consultant over the Western region. And so that's where you started going a little bit more directed into the insurance world, the life insurance world, but more on the advanced planning side before you decided to branch out and start your own agency. You've got the Legacy Planning Academy, the coaching program. Did I miss anything in between there?
No, and the consulting company to go with it.
And the consulting company. So you're not bored. That's a good thing. All right. So with that being said, I wanted him on here today to talk a little bit more about the advanced planning side of things. Now, this call can go whatever direction you want it to, whether it's on asking about active cases that you have now, if you want to dive deeper into the weeds on whatever. Tim, I give you my permission to steer that conversation of how, whatever direction you want it to go. So Dad, do you have a presentation or something you want to go through to kick it off?
Nope.
All right. So one of the questions that I wanted to ask is once somebody has a prospect on the line, once somebody is having that initial conversation with somebody, what's a good way to get the ball rolling? Let's say it's a business owner or somebody that you recognize, is making a lot of money. How do you start that fact-finding process to figure out, okay, where could the potential sales conversation go, or how do you start that fact-finding process with them?
I think the first, when you think about it, the first thing has to be the relationship. And once you start building that relationship, if you think about it, I think about this almost in the way I look at questionnaires. So if you think that first conversation, let's just take somebody that you're meeting for the first time. You're going to connect with them online. You're going to connect with them through a referral. Think about that first meeting, and it's, we've all done this. It's going to Starbucks. You meet at Starbucks for the first time. Hopefully you've done a little bit of background. You've looked them up on LinkedIn. You've looked at their website. So you walk into Starbucks, at least you recognize them. And from there, you're going to start, those questions, start thinking in your mind that initial questionnaire, almost that prospect questionnaire of who they are, what they enjoy doing, and start thinking about, probing a little bit. What are their goals in life? What stage of their business are they? And now start figuring out, start thinking about what opportunities there are there. And it's going to be very, not real in depth, because you haven't earned the right. I've had a lot of people that, say, well, I sent them my, a 20-page questionnaire before we met at Starbucks, and they refused to fill it out. You haven't earned the right for them to fill it out. I mean, think about that. It's like, okay, by the way, I want your bank account, I want your passwords, and I want your social security number, birth date, and your mom's maiden name, so I can get everything online, that I need to take your money. You're building that rapport with them, and take that opportunity to give them a very simple commercial of what you do, so they understand what your expertise is, what your support around you can be. Now you start taking that to the next level. With that first meeting is to get to know you, and you should come out of that meeting with a lot of understanding of kind of what their real goals are, at least the major goals. Now you're going to start into that next meeting, whether it's somebody you know, whether it's this prospect we're moving along. Now we're going to move them to client. Now we want to start digging into questions, start drilling into who they are, what real goals they have, and don't get so broad that you miss it. What's the hottest topic on their mind? Is it the business? Is it their family? What angle are you going to come into there? A lot of time, what I look at is you start, if I can come in with somebody that's a business owner, their hot buttons may be the business, buy sell agreement, key man. Once I start looking at that, and I like that client, because one slide that I use quite a bit is showing that, when you start that business transition conversation, that's really really bringing in both the estate planning concepts and business planning. I can't do a buy-sell agreement unless I've talked to them about their personal side. I want to make sure that buy-sell agreement conversation fits into what they're trying to do with their personal side. I got pulled into a meeting, it's been a few years ago. Oh, the client wants to talk buy-sell agreement. So I got brought in, I was prepped for a buy-sell conversation. Well, guess what? They didn't want to sell the business. They wanted to go to their kids. They wanted to keep it in the family. They were looking at, how do we get rid of this partner that's not part of the business? And great conversation, but we could have gotten there a whole lot faster if we'd actually had the right information in front of us. So as you start looking at, don't be afraid to ask those questions and give them time to answer. One of the problems I see in the industry is everybody, too many people come in with a preconceived idea of what this person needs. Think about this. I use the example a lot of times of, I'm going to go buy a car today, and I want to buy a red car. I want it to be a convertible with 2 doors and a big engine and a really good stereo. And I show up at the car lot, and all they have today are blue cars, 4 doors, with little tiny engine. What's that salesman going to try and sell me today? He's going to sell me, he wants to sell me a blue car. He doesn't care if I want a blue car. He just wants to meet his quota. And there's too many in our industry that go into that attitude. I don't care what I sell. I'm just going to sell blue cars because that's what I've got to sell. And if you come in it from a planner standpoint, as a planner, we've got to listen to our clients first. We've got to listen to what they're saying, what their goals are, what their situation is. Just because I met with the Smiths last week and the Joneses that I'm meeting with today look similar, they're not. Something about them is going to be way different, different goals for their kids, grandkids, business, whatever it is. And we've got to be listening to hear what those things are. So that planning mentality is what opens the door. And, understanding the advanced planning topics, it's just, you've got a library in the back of your head. And, if I understand what those advanced planning topics are, now I can start asking questions, not saying that, hey, we're going to use a dynasty trust today. It's, hey, you mentioned grandkids and that you want this, would like to benefit your grandkids. Maybe a dynasty trust is what we need that conversation to be, multi-generational planning. Good example, I was meeting with got brought in to meet with some young clients probably a little over a year ago. And it's one family business. There's about 400 employees now. They've bought dad out of the business. And they were hit by a bunch of hedge funds coming in trying to buy them. And there's a bunch of hedge funds going in, buying up a lot of their competitors. They're on the list, good company to buy out. And I said, I was talking to them enough, and I just brought up the concept of an ESOP. And I said, just so you guys know, here's what an ESOP does, keep it in your back pocket. You're probably a little bit young to be thinking about it, but it might something just on the radar for down the road. They just signed the engagement for the ESOP transaction about a week ago. And it just fit. Not that, I would love to say it's something I did, but it was really just probing questions and listening to what they were saying. And once they said we wanted to look at the ESOP a little bit more, took them about 6 months of kicking the tires, and it's the right thing for them, and they're moving fast on it. So I think that's, as you look at it, listen to the client and listen to, let them think. I don't know how many times I've gotten into a client conversation and you ask a client what their goals are. And it's a huge, huge pause, because some of them don't know what their goals are. They kind of know what they want to do, but you start saying, okay, what do you want to do with the kids? What do you want to do with the grandkids? You've got a son in the business. How do you want to treat that? What about the kids that aren't in the business? Give them time to process what those goals are. And then just understand, as you go through that process, there's a good chance those goals are going to change through the process too. As they have a chance to think about it, what they told you day one may not be, the same on day 5, because you're giving them time to process where they want to go and fitting the tools around it.
So what are some good probing questions to get the prospect to open up? Because you're familiar with how our program works, where somebody's requesting a book off LinkedIn. They're either interested in generally tax planning or tax advantage planning or retirement planning. But a lot of these people are very new in the discovery process. They're new to the advisor. So when they get on the phone with the advisor for the first time, they're going to be clammed up a little bit. They're going to be guarded with what their goals are, what their financial situation is, unless they've already been in the discovery process or their pain point is high enough where they're just like, I need help. They're going to still be guarded. So what are some good questions to get them to open up and to be willing to share that information?
I think the first thing, don't ever ask a yes/no question. Always ask an open-ended question that they have to think about and answer. And if you're talking to them about tax planning, it's one, if you ask them a question, do you have a CPA? Yes. Do you like your CPA? Yes. Now, I would rather ask the question, do you feel like you're paying too much in taxes and would like to, reduce that tax bill? Now they've got a ton. They're not talking about individuals, because they may have a good CPA, but I'll tell you what, it's with a lot of CPAs, you've got about a 1 in 10 chance that you've got a planning CPA. And it's probably even less than that. Less than 10% of the CPAs actually are tax planners. And the problem is, what does every client think? Well, my CPA is a tax planner, does taxes, so he must be planning. Well, when does he plan? Well, I take my stuff to him every, March, and then he fills out my tax return and I pay the bill. Okay, did you talk to him about how to reduce the taxes? So when you're asking those questions, I think it's a good thing to ask, would you like to reduce your taxes? Are you taking advantage of all the tax, planning strategies in your business personally? Have you set your kids up for education? And so I think it's more asking those open-ended questions and then listening to the response.
Gotcha. I like that. So once somebody's had that initial discovery call, let's say that it was a quick 10-15 minute conversation, you didn't get too deep into the weeds. What's a good way to dangle a carrot out in front of that prospect to entice them to show up to a second meeting with you? Because I've seen some advisors who will go through, and it's almost like, and you kind of alluded to this earlier, what they'll do is kind of take a kitchen sink approach where they're just shotgunning a bunch of different ideas and hoping that the prospect gravitates toward one of the strategies or ideas. But what's a good way to entice somebody to show up for that second meeting?
I think that shotgun approach doesn't work. Number one, I mean, I get more graphic. I say it's like thrown up on the wall and they get to pick out something. If you think about that, that's too much of our industry. You know, and I go back to think about if you were meeting that individual in a Starbucks. You know, if I like Starbucks, you know, those meetings are personal. It's getting to know them a little bit better. But would you ever go into there and in that Starbucks meeting, if you're meeting and you know personally, would you sit there and say, okay, here's 30 things that I can do for you, pick one that interests you? And we would never, I mean, most of us would never do that in that Starbucks meeting, but we're happy to do it online. And so I think part of that is always have a follow-up. So if you know, it's one where if you leave it in just the client's hands to respond, then you've missed an opportunity. So in that first meeting, I will always try and get in that first meeting that I have a follow-up with them. I'm going to set myself up to, you know, to purposely be able to reach out and, you know, email them something, or I'm going to figure it out and give them a phone call. So I'm not just saying in that first call, by the way, if you're interested, call me. You know, call me and set up meeting number 2. In between meeting number 1 and 2, you know, in that conversation, if they're interested in tax planning, if they're interested in something in business transition, if they're interested, if the conversation was around life insurance, long-term care, get something that you can proactively reach out to them and send them. That way it's one they know I listened and now I'm sending something out to you.
And when you say send something out, you're not talking about sending like an illustration, right?
No.
What would you recommend sending out, or what have you seen work well in sending something back out to the client or prospect?
It might be as simple as let me see if you've got a brochure about your business. You know, this is me, this is my resume, we've got what we call a brag book that's, you know, it's our information and talks about our company and what we do. And I use that for a lot of people. If I didn't get far enough to figure out exactly what they're wanting to listen to, you know, pique their interest, I'll send something like that it's just like, here's who we are, just so they can get a little bit more about us, our process. But it's one, I don't go straight into insurance or insurance companies, insurance illustration. You don't have enough information usually at that point to give them anything meaningful. And if you do, guess what they're going to do with that? They're going to walk it over to their guy. Hey, this is what Rick just sent me. What do you think? Well, it's what we would do. Well, that's terrible. Let me show you something better. Thanks, Rick. You know, so I would send them a concept. If they were interested in a concept, then send them a concept piece. If you were talking about, you know, estate planning, you know, send them a little concept piece on estate planning. Something simple. The other thing that I think people get caught up a little bit too much in is they'll send a video. Hey, here's a video, watch the video. Well, how many times do you watch the video from somebody you just met? You know, some do, a lot don't. So I'd give them something to pique their interest on a topic that they brought up.
Like that. So let's move on to some of the advanced planning concepts that you're seeing out there. What are some of the hot topics that you're seeing, given, you know, where the economy's at, just in general?
I'm seeing a lot with, in fact, I just on my coaching call just a little bit ago was talking about charitable planning. So I think we're seeing a lot of people getting out of real estate, selling their businesses, you know, looking for a way to kind of create more of that long-term income. So we're seeing a lot in the charitable planning space. Charitable remainder trusts are back. We've probably got more charitable remainder trusts in the last couple of years than in the last 15 before that.
And for anybody that watches this who's not familiar with charitable remainder trust, charitable lead trust, what are the advantages of using that when you're selling real estate, selling a business?
Well, with the charitable remainder trust, if you set up the trust before the transaction, then you can sell that property income tax free, reposition the assets, create a big tax deduction. And then you'll take a stream of income, usually for husband and wife over their joint lifetimes. That annuity stream coming out will be taxable most likely, but it creates lifetime income and gets mom and dad out of fixing toilets. So just the way that before we were doing a lot of charitable lead trusts, as the interest rates have gone up, charitable remainder trusts are much more attractive for a tax deduction. Charitable lead trusts, the deduction's gone way down just because where we're at in the interest rate market. And it's driven by the interest rate markets on the IRS's calculations.
And how do you wrap life insurance into that charitable remainder trust sale?
Here's the big thing. And when I look at charitable remainder trust, I was on with a lot of a group of doctors probably about 2 months ago. And I knew enough about this group of doctors that they were not charitably inclined. So I just started off and I said, hey guys, I know you guys aren't charitably inclined, but I'm going to tell you, you're going to be charitably inclined by the time we finish this conversation, because the tax savings are so big. You're going to be asking, which charity should you give stuff to? But if you think about the Congress has incentivized the charitable giving. So you can create a big charitable deduction that you can offset on your tax return. You can reposition your assets into something that's more assets under management, investment based. You can create lifetime income. You can benefit the charity. If you start looking at that, the one person that may not be happy at this point are the kids, because you just moved $1 million asset that's going to benefit mom and dad and charity. So this is a great place to step in and say, great, with all that tax money we've just saved and the money we've generated, let's get a replacement insurance policy to get that $1 million back to the kids, income and estate tax free. So
Rick, are you saying this is good for selling a business, or would it be capable of doing it for someone that has a lot of real estate, or both?
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're selling an asset, charitable remainder trusts are a great thing to look at. So I'll use them in the business. I'll use them in real estate. I would say I see probably more real estate transactions used with CRTs than businesses, just because people don't plan far enough ahead on the business sale, thinking about the CRT, that they're too far into it to back out of it.
You can do it with stocks too, can't you? If you're selling stocks,
investment accounts, yes.
Gotcha. So stocks, real estate, business, any appreciated asset, correct?
Any appreciated asset. The problem, the two things you got to be careful of: one, it can't have debt on it, and two, you've got to have the CRT in place before you start the sales process.
Yeah. So before the letter of engagement.
Yep. Yeah. Usually it's one where this one happened, was probably a year and a half ago. I got the phone call 3 days before they were going to close the sale. And I said, well, here's what we would have done. And it was funny, the CPA said, I love this. This is great. The attorney, this is great. I said, well, let me just tell you, if you guys want to move forward with this, you've got to start the whole sales process over. And they said, we can't walk away, and that little whoops cost them several $1 million in tax. If you've done the sale, then you can look at a charitable lead trust, and because a charitable lead can be done after the sale. But I can tell you the charitable lead deduction has gone down significantly with the increase in the interest rates. Still a good idea, but
if somebody had multiple real estate homes or apartments or whatever, would you do each sale as a separate trust, or can, once they have a trust established, it can always go through the same trust?
Both. It's usually one. It depends on how you set up the charitable remainder trust. If it's a charitable remainder unit trust, then you can add more property to it. An annuity trust, you can't. But we would look at it and usually have that conversation up front. Or is this one and done? Is this something we might add to in the future? have that conversation. So if we can add to it, it's much easier. But there again, the goals can change every time too. So it really is just figure out what's the best fit now going forward using our crystal ball.
Okay.
Gotcha. So next to charitable remainder trust, what other concepts are you seeing out there?
Seen a lot in the business transition buy-sell agreements and leading up to that employee retention. I mean, as I'm talking to these, these clients with business clients that are looking at, I want to, walk from the business in the next, 5 to 7 years, whatever. If you think about that, we're in a tight employee market. And it's one where it's interesting. I just had a client of ours. They're on the East Coast, just lost their CFO to a cannabis company on the West Coast. And they told them, said, hey, we'll pay about the same, but we'll let you work from home. And if we decide to, if we go public, you'll be in on the ground floor and get stock options. That was enough for him to say, hey, I'd love the idea of working from home, a little bit more kickback, and left. They thought, okay, this guy's going to stay with us forever. So employee retention is a big area. Everything from CERT plans, on the complicated end, all the way down to just, executive bonus for simplicity. And some ERISA, some not ERISA, some DOL issues in there. So you just look at it. I think employee retention is a big area, because how do we retain those key employees? How do we incentivize them without them walking out the door? And let's be honest, 401ks don't cut it anymore. Everybody's got a 401k. Everybody's got, health insurance. So now what can we do a little bit different with the golden handcuffs? And I think employee retention is huge. And then that business transition, buy-sell agreement planning. It's one, if you look at the statistics, it's virtually 100% of business owners say they should have a buy-sell agreement. A little under 90% actually have a buy-sell agreement. So it's a big open market for people that are working in that space. And it's a great way. Once you get that buy-sell conversation started, then you can easily maneuver into the estate planning world.
I like that. What about products? What products are you seeing out there that seem to be floating to the top of the preferred bucket?
I would say, I think the, IUL is still strong. I think the IUL, it's interesting that, some new AG 49 rules came in to, restrict, what you can show as a return. And I'm okay with that. But I think it's one IUL, especially with the riders. I'm looking at more companies adding more chronic illness riders, chronic injury riders. There for a while, National Life LSW led that. A lot of companies have caught up now with the living benefits. So I think that's an area that's growing. I would say we're using a lot more too. I think people are worried about the market and where it's going. So whole life has definitely, popped its head back up again. And I think there's a lot more clients, if they were shown a whole life policy, would probably take that even over an IUL, just because they want to see it, they want to see, that account going up every year versus, the up, the down, the flat, the whatever. So I think whole life's making a pretty big jump from what I'm seeing, just predictability, some guarantees.
Any particular carriers on the IUL and whole life side?
IUL, we're seeing a lot of North American is being used quite a bit. Pacific Life's, kind of just, staying right up there at the top. We're seeing a lot of Lafayette on the whole life side. Just, they've got some, what I do like about Lafayette, and one of the reasons we're seeing more of those people that are concerned about asset protection for their insurance policies. If you can single pay Lafayette policy. So let's just say you were doing, 500,000 of premium into the policy on a 5-pay. You would send them the whole $500,000 check. 100,000 goes into premium one, 400,000 goes in their premium deposit account. But their premium deposit account, this is unique. I haven't seen any other carrier with this. It's a rider attached to the policy. So if you're looking at asset protection, since it's a rider on the policy, that whole 500,000 is protected in the states that protect life insurance. Whereas most companies, their premium deposit account is separate from the policy and not protected. So that's attracted quite a few business owners that are looking at that whole life space. So, and trust me, that list changes, every few months. Whoever's on top now, people figure out what's good about their policy, copy it. So it's an ever changing, but I would say the top 10 companies usually stay top 10.
Gotcha. I like that.
You should look at Symetra. Symetra's got really low cost of insurance, great indexes, and really easy company to work with. So just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I've looked. We've got some using Symetra. They haven't quite hit. I mean, they're in the top 10 with us. So yeah, we're using them.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so we're bumping right against the edge of, or the end of time here. Do you guys have any questions that you want to ask directly, or anything else that we can help answer for you? Well, we've got Rick on the line here.
No, the CRT was definitely interesting for me. I mean, I need to look more into that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What's the best way to have everybody get in touch with you? Yeah.
Probably easiest ways, and probably start with just email me.
Okay.
Then we can set up a time.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll make sure to get your email out to everybody, and then there's a couple of videos that I know you've recorded on employee retention planning, buy-sell agreements, charitable remainder trust. So I'll make sure to get those out to everybody as well. But if you guys do have any follow-up questions, anything else we can do for you, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, I got a record as far as tax planning. Do you know of any legit oil and gas investment people? I know a lot of these they've blown up, and you get that nice big tax break in the beginning, but if they're not legit companies, it's a problem, right? So
it's one. I don't know if there's any that I would give a super endorsement to.
Right.
There's a reason you get a big tax deduction with them. Is the chance of them hitting the right way is not good. But
right.
I'll reach
a
out.
couple of companies are touting that the research has already been done. They've already tested. They know they're going to hit oil. They might not know the quantity, but they're not going to have a dry well because of the technology now. But the tax break is huge, and if you're going to get some kind of return down the road, I mean that's a nice planning tool. But I'm always afraid that we're going to give the money away, get the tax break, and never see anything after that.
Yeah, and that's the risk. I do talk to clients about potentially, looking at those types of investments.
Yeah.
When I see a lot of these, doctors and stuff with a lot of passive activity loss carryover on their return.
Yeah.
I'll tell them, hey, the only way to get rid of that is you've got to get K1 income to offset it.
Right.
So if you can look at oil and gas potential as for K1 income, not as much for the loss side. So they're looking at companies that are more seasoned,
right,
versus those that are drilling still. That's where I would say I see more of the clients I've been working with going,
gotcha.
versus those that are looking at it from the deduction side.
Right. So you act kind of as a family office model?
Yeah, we do have a family office model going.
Okay, cool.
I'm seeing that you do too from
Yes.
what's behind your head.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is the great, honestly, I think that is, if everybody in this industry, in the financial industry, understood the family office model, that's the right way to do it. I
Well, every
mean,
customer I ever talked to was like, yeah, that makes so much sense. Why wouldn't I at least look at that model? Yeah.
I can tell you it's because the biggest thing it takes is somebody to be the quarterback.
Right.
The financial advisor is the one that is most equipped, well equipped for that.
Yeah.
But it's also one where so many in our industry don't step up to to having the expertise to be able to, do that.
Right.
And that's what's missing. The CPAs and attorneys aren't good at it.
No, no, you got to definitely quarterback that.
Yep.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I always tell everybody I'm like the quarterback. So I do all the intake and then we'll figure out what you need and we'll go from there. We'll bring in whatever specialists we need and,
Yep.
we'll get that team working in your direction. And so sounds like I could add you to my list of team members.
Yeah. Happy to be.
Awesome. So look forward to getting your information then.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yep. And I'll make sure to get that over to you right after we're off the call here.
All right. Thanks, Tyson.
Yep.
So I got in late. I've been back to back for the last 4 days, so
All good.
not a problem. No, I'm not complaining, but
yeah, busy's good.
Yeah.
We like busy.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah. So, Dad, I appreciate you being on. I think this is something that, if you're open to it, I'd like to make this periodic. I think this would benefit everybody to be able to talk about some of these concepts and strategies and keep everybody rolling.
Happy to do it.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Okay. Thanks.
All
That's me,
right.
right?
Take care.
Bye.